Welcome to our study, Treasury of Precious Qualities by Jigme Lingpa. And I'd like to start off just apologizing with the non-show last week. This was because where I live, there's actually been, as many of you know, there's been some very heavy rains, massive rains really, and also a lot of flooding. And this resulted in, gosh, I can't remember, like 5 days or something like that without the internet. A few days without power, and then quite a bit longer without internet. So that's why many of you were left waiting last week without the host showing up. Anyway, we should be back on track. Let me right away say that from now on, the study that we're undertaking here, the Treasury of Precious Qualities, is going to be on Saturdays. So next Saturday, March 19, will be the next installment of our study. So just to let you know, while I remember, and I'll also repeat this at the end, the next episode will be next Saturday, not Sunday. Sunday is going to be a new program, which is, it's partly a study of Kangyur Rinpoche's book, Living is Dying, but it will incorporate a lot of people who work in the field of palliative care, Buddhist funerals, people who present mindfulness to those who are at the late stage in life, and so on. So it's going to be quite an involved program. I'll be going through the study of the text itself, and that's kind of, you could say, the point of departure. But there will be a lot of really interesting people to listen to who have a lot to offer in the area of where we're heading. Living is dying. The moment we're born, we're heading towards the inevitable moment of departure. So in this context, actually, the Buddhist teaching has a lot to say about that, because anything, whether it's living or dying, it's all experience, it's all the relative unfolding of our consciousness as it embodies itself, as it creates various realms. And of course, this is what we're looking at right now in terms of the realms of samsara. And so from the Buddhist perspective, it's not so much this big mystery, but it's very much a question of understanding what our given conditions are and working with them. So in a way, what we're studying right now ties very nicely in with what we're going to be studying next week. And by the way, while I remember also, I'd like to, I think we haven't met since it was Tibetan New Year, Losar. So we're now in the year of the water tiger. So Tashi Delay, Ama Padro Hukamzang. And I hope you all have a wonderful year. Hope this will be a year in which the possibilities for integrating the view and practice of the Dharma will be enhanced favorably. And in doing so, may this be a contributing condition for peace in all aspects of our existence. Of course, right now we're very concerned with the condition of peace in the human realm, but we have to remember the general condition of samsara everywhere is continually upheaval. So just because right now we have, and of course this is significant, someone like myself, I'm a human, so whenever there's talk of instability in the human world, this worries me. And I can, of course, understand all of those who live closer to the core of this instability right now in Europe and so on. My thoughts and prayers are really with you in regards to this present condition of instability. But again, remember, this is why we practice the Buddhist teaching, because there is always inherent to our condition as sentient being this exposure to instability, change, suffering. So all the more reason for engaging in with what we're doing right now. So Now, we're presently looking at the hells, and this is just a fact of life. Whatever realm we're in, we all undergo varying degrees of intensely painful experiences, and particularly this alienated experience in which we find ourselves at conflict with the world is essentially what we define as the hell realm. And I'd like to put a little bit, you could say, perspective into the discussion of the hells with a little bit of a presentation of the hell realm from Trungpa Rinpoche. And this is understanding that the hell realm is where we really solidify self versus other, to the extent that this relationship is profoundly toxic. It's taken to the max, in which there's continually this space of just experiencing pain, and the pain is projected onto the other, even like Trungpa Rinpoche points out, even when if the pain might be a bit diminishing, the aggression might be diminishing, we have a strong sense of aggression coming in from the outer world. So that is how we experience hells, in which the degree of alienation and aggression has picked up so that it's coming back at us continually. And this, of course, feeds our aggression. So in the Buddhist teaching, we so often point out how, in the case of our discomfort with our phenomenal world, aggression will never help. Trungpa Rinpoche here says, and this is in the discussion of how anger feeds and perpetuates the hell experience, he says you cannot really eliminate pain through aggression. The more you kill, the more you strengthen the killer, who will create new things to be killed. The aggression grows until finally there's no space. The whole environment has been solidified. There are not even gaps in which to look back or do a double take. The whole space has been completely filled with aggression. It is outrageous. There is no opportunity to create a watcher, to testify to your destruction, no one to give you a report. But at the same time, the aggression grows. The more you destroy, the more you create. And this is in the sense of the more that you destroy an adversary, the more you are creating adversaries. Like he said above, the more you, what is it again? The more you kill, the more you strengthen the killer. And that will create new things that creates these new adversaries. Traditionally, Trungpa Rinpoche says, aggression is symbolized by the sky and earth radiating red fire. The earth turns into a red-hot iron, and space becomes an environment of flame and fire. There is no space to breathe any cool air or feel coldness. Whatever you see around you is hot, intense, extremely claustrophobic. The more you try to destroy your enemies or win over your opponents, the more you generate resistance, counter-aggression, bouncing back at you. Now here, Trungpa Rinpoche is particularly talking about the hot hells, but of course we do have the opposite with the cold hells, and I forget now, but if this comes from a traditional source or it might just possibly be in contemporary interpretation, so please take that with a light touch. But I seem to remember some talk about how you could say external manifestation or external expression of anger, as we do it when we fly off the handle at somebody. This very much is the style that creates the hot hells, whereas the internalizing of anger, you could say what's behind passive aggression and the general just resentment that is still anger, yet is not expressed, is then the cause of the cold hell. So we have these two styles of hells, but equally very much about the pain as being perpetuated through the environment. In the hell realms, Trungpa Rinpoche says, we throw out flames and radiations which are continually coming back to us. There is no room at all in which to experience any spaciousness or openness. Rather, there is a constant effort, which can be very cunning, to close up all space. The hell realm can only be created through your relationships with the outside world, whereas in the jealous God realm, your own psychological hang-ups could be the material for creating the asura, or hungry ghost, jealous God, jealous God mentality. In the hell realm, there is a constant situation of relationship. You're trying to play games with something, and the attempt bounces back on you, constantly creating extremely claustrophobic situations, so that finally there is no room in which to communicate at all. At that point, the only way to communicate is by trying to recreate your anger. You thought you had managed to win a war of one-upmanship, but finally you did not get a response from the other person. You one-upped him right out of existence. So you're faced only with your own aggression coming back at you, and it manages to fill up all the space. One is left alone only once more, without excitement. So you seek another way of playing the game again and again and again. You do not play for enjoyment, but because you do not feel protected nor secure enough. If you have no way to secure yourself, you feel bleak and cold, so you must rekindle the fire. In order to rekindle the fire, you have to fight constantly to maintain yourself. One cannot help playing the game. One just finds oneself playing it all the time. So we essentially are caught up in a condition in which we continually perpetuate this hell situation. So we're understanding that this is something that essentially is, you could say, can be traced back to our psychology and our way of handling our experience. But the thing is also then, this is the point, that we shouldn't be content with just having some, you could say, psychological explanation and leaving it as some sort of rather vague understanding about what's happening right now within our world, which of course is indicative, but also we should understand this actually affects us at the time when we lose our present particular embodiment. So this is where we then come to the, you could say pragmatism actually of the way that this is presented traditionally in terms of the very real experience of this playing out in terms of external environment. So here we've discussed the hot hells, and now we're going to be looking at the cold hells. So Jigme Lingpa, let's just see, I think we're doing 15, 14, and 15. Yeah. Freezing snowstorms bind them with a rope of shivering cold. They cannot move although they are alive. The wind sinks knives of ice into the marrow of their bones. They're crushed between the teeth of icy torment. The hells of cold are, and these are then the names of the hells: blisters, burning blisters, lamentation, groaning, chattering teeth. The hell where flesh splits open sixfold like upala flowers, the lotus hell, and the great lotus hell, with wounds of 8 or 16 or of countless fissures, where worms with pointed beaks devour and eat into the flesh. So Kangyur Rinpoche comments: in dreadful ravines, lashed by freezing blizzards and snowstorms that grip the body with a rope of shivering so tightly that it cannot move, beings are completely paralyzed with cold. They are utterly transfixed with pain, and yet they cannot leave their lives and die. An indescribable gale thrusts its knives into their vitals, into the very marrow of their bones again and again, and the cessation of glacial cold permeates them outside and within. They are tormented by the icy contact, as though they were a grain of sesame crushed between a man's teeth. In the hell of blisters, the terrible cold causes great swellings to appear on the body. In the hell of burst blisters, These swellings burst open and turn into wounds. Then the cold is so unbearable that beings cry constantly, and this is the hell of lamentation. After this, in the hell of groaning, lamentation is no longer possible, and only protracted moans can escape from the mouths of the beings caught there. In the hell of chattering teeth, even moaning is impossible. Their hairs stand up in bristles, and the body and mind are feeble and listless. In the hell of Utpala wounds, the skin turns blue and splits open, forming patterns like the 6 petals of an Utpala flower. Then, in the lotus wound hell, the flesh breaks open into 8 pieces like lotuses. Then, in the great lotus wound hell, the flesh opens in patterns of 16 pieces and more until the fragments are innumerable. And from the fractured skin drip blood and pus. Worms with iron jaws appear in the wounds and burrow into the flesh, devouring it. The suffering experienced in such states is inconceivable. In order to have an idea of the lifespan of beings caught there, imagine a basket filled with sesame seeds to a quantity of 20 large koshala measures. Okay, I'm going to have to look that up. 20 large measures. Okay, an Indian measure of a volume of corresponding to 2 pints. Okay, pints. What is that? I know roughly what a pint of beer looks like. So 2 pints would be a liter. So 20 liter. So baskets, 20 liters of sesame seeds. Let's say that tentatively. The length of life in the hell of bliss is equivalent to the time it would take to empty the container by removing 1 seed every 100 years. The lifespan in the cold hells increases exponentially to the power of 20 for each successive hell. The ephemeral hells. Because of different karmas, beings see themselves as doors or pillars, ropes or hearths. They're felled into stumps of trees enclosed in doorless cavities. Their bitter ordeal knows no end. So, Kangyur Rinpoche comments, beings in the ephemeral hells, which exist in addition to the main hells, suffer because they identify logs of wood and so forth as their bodies. And these are chopped and split. In similar ways, they may be imprisoned in small stones or large boulders in which there are no openings. Again, they may be caught in doors. Okay, hold on, just a second. Network issues. Not an unfamiliar phenomenon for me these days. Let's see here. Okay, it should work. Okay. Or else they are blown hither and thither in the sky. All these hallucinatory experiences in which they identify these objects as their bodies and which give rise to suffering, whether constant or intermittent, being perhaps restricted to daytime or nighttime, or just for an instant. That's the thing about these ephemeral hells. They might be on and off. Due to different negative actions such as appropriating and exploiting the property of the Sangha. You know, when we talk, and actually I think I remember this one from Words of My Perfect Teacher, I might be wrong, but there was, for example, this butcher that took a vow to never practice butchering at night. This is indicative actually of the value of vows, because taking the vow, even though he wouldn't be butchering at night anyway, because he took a vow of not butchering at night, it said that there was this person who would, during night, who would be fanned by goddesses and looked after as soon as dawn broke. Then again, he would be experiencing an intense hellish existence. But this was because of having that vow of just, I shan't kill during nighttime. So that's the point here is there might be something that we're not doing anyway, but if we take a vow not to do it, it has far more value because there's an intention behind it than if we just happen to not do it. So if there's something that's negative that we're not doing, the fact that we're not killing, that we're not killers, we're not employed to kill, we're not mercenaries and so on, we could very well take a vow, I will not kill. And so in that way, the value of the fact that we, anyway, you could even say inadvertently aren't killing, has so much far more value. I hope that makes sense. So these various styles of suffering, constant or intermittent, are all due to different negative actions, such as appropriating and exploiting property sangha. Modgalyayana. Modgalyayana, you might know this. You know, when you see the Buddha, you would see two students standing next to the Buddha. One is Shariputra and the other is Modgalyayana. So these are the two, you say, close students of the Buddha. So Modgalyayana has said, within this world, no bliss is to be found. For just as if there were in transitory hells, for just as if they were in transitory hells, beings are tormented by their private woes, caught as though in blazing furnaces. (17) If this noisy tumult, all these waves of pain, in this teeming flood of life is not brought to an end, the rampart of this human life, superior to the God, will burst, and we will wander in samsara's desolation. So right now we have this extraordinary human life, which is a place in which we could actually bring an end to all of this. So Kangyur Rinpoche comments, just like tremendous floodwaters forced through a narrow gully, the lives of beings are buffeted by the stormy waves of suffering. If the tumult is not immediately calmed by the wisdom arising from hearing, reflecting, and meditating upon the teachings, then this human condition, which is far superior to that of a God, being a basis for Dharma practice, will be ruined like a collapsing breakwater. After death, and in the lives that follow, one will wander and circle again and again in the fearful wasteland of samsara, where all is pain and desolation. Okay. Personally, I'm just glad you're going okay after everything's happening. Still able to do these classes is just a bonus. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, I was actually very lucky because even though I lived just next to a town, Mullumbimby, that was, totally flooded. There's a few places that didn't flood, but a lot of flooding happened. Houses, residents, shops, and so forth. And of course, even worse up in Lismore. Anyway, I'm lucky to live outside of Mullumbimby, where we were up on a hill at Panchasisha, so that's fortunate. I'm always puzzled by the vow thing you mentioned, taking the vow of not doing something you wouldn't do anyway, like a mute person taking silence vows. I get that. No sounds sounds absurd. How is that a thing? Could you please elaborate and clarify the logic behind that? Yeah, because the one thing is that we just happen to not do something, but if there's an intention, then it's very different. I have no intention of beating up my neighbor, but the moment that I actually think, I will not beat up my neighbor, I've already laid down something that is informed by a wish to not harm, to not be aggressive. And so I've laid down something in my mind in which I'm proactive in terms of actions. I'm not just driven along. In the Buddhist teaching, we look very much at what the intention is. It's the exact opposite of what we sometimes say, where we say, oh yeah, well, it's all very good with intentions, but what you do is what really matters. And that's true, but actually the intention behind the action is far more significant. That's where the intention. We might actually, for example, sometimes have to do something violent. You know, you might actually have to push somebody out of harm's way. You know, there's a big truck coming, and you give somebody a violent push so they are not run over by the truck. And in doing so, you might actually, you know, hurt them. But the intention behind that action of hitting somebody, pushing them, you might hurt their shoulders, actually comes from a place of caring. You know, you might tell your teenage children that you have to be home at a certain hour, you know, just because you know that there's a danger of, you know, whatever they could get into or what. You're concerned for their well-being. So actions that are not necessarily perceived as positive due to the intention behind it are actually positive actions. And that's similarly also then taking a vow in which you might just, you know, might just happen anywhere. I won't do this. I won't do. We happen to not do something. The moment there's an intention behind it, we are being proactive. I'm sure you can understand this. It's really just about being proactive with our actions. The moment there's a vow behind it, then we are much more, you could say, there's direction. We're shaping our habit. We're not just sort of tagging along. We're shaping also future experience. We're shaping our psychology. You know, I wouldn't be beating up on my neighbor, but if I say I will not beat up on my neighbor, I'm determined. I'm shaping a psychology of determination to not resort to aggression. Yeah. Okay. Right. But your example is still conceivably in the realm of your possibilities. It's not like the mute person taking the silence vow at all. They couldn't do it anyway to start with. How does that accumulate positive energy? Okay, in the case of the mute person taking the vow not to speak, well, maybe, you know. You could say also, yeah, that would be a bit of like, if I, for example, decide I'm not going to levitate on Sundays. Yeah, that probably wouldn't really amount to a lot because I don't do a lot of levitation anyway. It would have to be within the realm of possibility. So in the case of the mute person taking a vow of silence, okay, yes, that point. But in the case of somebody who happens to hang around the house, maybe on Sundays, all on his or her own, taking a vow of silence, you know, even though this person might not be talking anyway, that does make a difference because it is still within the realm of possibilities. So, okay. I hope it's making sense now. All right. So, the suffering of the higher realms. Okay. You know, Paul Rinpoche said it doesn't matter where in samsara you are. It's like an insect caught inside a jar. You might be in the higher, you might be in the lower, you're still caught. And of course, here we're talking about the profound suffering of the lower realms. But the thing is, even the higher realms, they sooner or later give way to what the lower realms. So, as such, okay. I hope it's making sense. So, 18. Once the karma that created indeterminate absorption in the formless realms is worn away, a subsequent existence is compounded with exhaustion of the former actions that produce samadhi in the realm of form. There comes the misery of falling into lower states. So when we, for example, have this absorption in which there's not any, you could say essentially a condition of numbness. It's a condition of no pain, no sense of body, and no sense of the ordinary perceptions as such. This is what we refer to then as the conditions of the highest realms in samsara, still within the delusion. You could say the cognitive obscuration has in no way been touched, but there is nevertheless the absence of the other obscurations, the obscurations of the afflictions, the obscurations of karma and habitual patterns. And as such then, just staying in this state of stillness in which there is no perception, there's the absence of ordinary suffering. There's even a presence of absorption into bliss, and we can sustain that through samadhi. But sooner or later, because you could say the alaya vijnana, or the storehouse consciousness, you could say the imprints of former patterns, they haven't been exhausted, they're really just put on hold. Then we have the experience of then falling back into the ordinary, or rather the lower realms, whatever they might be. But basically, this absorption ends at one point, and then the whole experience of samsara recommences, or the lower realms. The Kangyur Rinpoche comments, now even if an existence in the higher states is obtained, this is of no real benefit. In the four lofty realms of formlessness, beings are suspended in an indeterminate absorption of blank neutrality, which is devoid of both bliss and suffering. When the positive propelling karma that establishes such an existence is exhausted and the absorption comes to an end, earlier karmas are revived by craving and grasping. So this is in the 12 links of dependent arising. Yeah, see the action of 12 links of rising later in the chapter. We'll look at that. These are part of the links that essentially drive the cycle of our movement through experience after experience, lifetime after lifetime. So when these earlier karma are revived by craving and grasping, sepa and lemba, and this produces the next existence in which many kinds of suffering will have to be experienced. The gods of the form realm, from the heaven of the pure up to the heaven of great fruit, enjoy the bliss of the four samadhis. But when the karma that caused them to be born there, and the resulting bliss, contaminated as it is with defiled emotions, are exhausted, these gods experience intense suffering, for they must then fall into the realms of hell or the other states of loss. So when we say that these conditions are contaminated, it means that the actual, essentially we're just talking about a sort of spiritual bypass, if you like, or a suppression of just the tendencies. Not so much the traditional sense of suppression in the sense of just sort of grinning, bearing suffering or whatever, but more just in the sense of just abiding in a condition in which there's simply just a absorption in this condition of bliss, self-absorption. The God realm essentially is a self-absorption. So there's nothing that has been touched in terms of the causes of suffering. And that is then the various defiled emotions, the kleshas. So then 19 reads, Brahma and Devendra and the universal kings enjoy the ripening effect of virtuous acts, like sunlight peeping through the clouds. But when this is used up, they wane, just like the lamp oil that the flame consumes. So same thing again. Brahma enjoys passionless bliss. Devendra Koshika is the most perfect and glorious of all the gods of the desire realms, dwelling upon the surface of Mount Meru. A Chakravartin wields power over the four cosmic continents. All such beings are what they are, lapped in pleasure through the ripening effect of their previous positive actions. Isn't it funny that we look at such persons and say, oh, they have such a nice life? I mean, we have it even in this world, yeah? Look at such persons saying, wow, what an amazing existence they have. They don't really, they're just having a moment, a passing moment. It can be a long moment, but there's absolutely no respite in them. There's no, you could say, real pleasure there. It's just a momentary break. That's all. So there's nothing impressive about, you look at, persons with incredible wealth or whatever it might be that we look at and think, wow, what a life. It's just such a, you could say, it's so inconsequential. It's so unimportant. So Kangyur Rinpoche then says, their bliss is like the sun emerging momentarily from behind the clouds. Yeah. When the effect of past virtue is exhausted, every pleasure and excellence falls away like dwindling lamplight as the oil is gradually consumed. As Nagarjuna says it in Shuleka, the letter to a friend, one who has become high Indra, worthy of respect, must fall to earth again through karma's power. And one who has become a universal king will later be a slave of servants in the wheel of life. So it's continually turning. Nothing is fixed. The only thing that really is of extraordinary nature is this condition that we who are sitting here studying Jigme Lingpa's text and who are practicing the path, we actually have the opportunity to identify the causes of suffering and what it is that brings an end to this delusion. So then in the root verses now it reads, and even though the lotus is beneath his feet, on pavements soft and yielding to the tread, blush crimson in the light projected from the crowns of gods and nagas and Kinara lords, Indra too, at length, will languish on a burning iron spike. All lost will be the soft caress of goddesses, who lull them on their youthful breasts in lovely groves, and in exquisite palaces adorned with tapestries of pearls. The gods will fall precipitated into pits of fiery ash. Their robes, their thrones, their garlands old and sere. No goddesses stand by to wipe their sweating brows. They gaze in tears upon those close to them, an agony of death unknown to humankind. This is about the fall from grace. We're talking about gods here. This is not like just looking at, people who temporarily maybe had, 50 years of wealth or a lifetime of wealth or, 10 years of wealth, Look, wow, these people have it so good. That kind of momentary phenomenon, nothing then compared to when we talk about the gods, where we're talking about hundreds and thousands of years of this kind of experience. But once that is gone, then it's just past. It has no reality whatsoever. So it doesn't really help that it was lasting for a very long time. What happens, however, after such a long time, what seems to have been an infinitude, is then the moment of death, in which we would say the gods, they have this incredible anguish at the time of death because they have the clairvoyance that sees where they're heading, and they have that sense of falling from this experience of the higher realm. So Kangyur Rinpoche comments, the pavements of the celestial city, fair to see, Hanadu, I think, high on the level summit of Mount Meru, are soft and yielding to the tread, rising back in place at the lifting of a foot. This is where Indra reigns supreme, clothed in divine raiment of soft Anjalika, soft to touch, as Vishnu and the gods of the realm of the four great kings, as the Naga and Kinara lords bend low before him. The lotuses beneath his feet, bluish in the radiance of their ruby diadems. Yet, when the propelling force of his karma is spent, even Indra himself will fall and be born in hell, there to be tormented and impaled on burning iron spikes. Such are the defects of the desire realm. Here the gods recline in bliss, cradled on the superb, youthful bosoms of divine maidens, skilled in the 64 arts of dance. They enjoy delightful groves of wish-fulfilling trees, garments, and gems, beautiful pavilions contrived of jewels and adorned with canopies of pearls, bells, and chimes, and every other elegance. But at the last, they lose it all and fall headlong into the pit of fiery embers and the forest of swords. As a sign of their approaching death, their robes grow foul and rank. They find no comfort on their couches. Their garlands wilt, and they are abandoned by the goddesses who had previously attended them. And drops of sweat, which until then they had never known, now break out upon their brows and limbs. Gone are the divine maidens who used to bathe them. They are beside themselves with dread, perceiving with the eyes of divine foresight the places of their next birth, and as such they faint with terror. Unable to approach, their friends and family can only call to them from afar, sending them wishes that they might be born again among the humans or in the human realm. And as they gaze upon their friends, they weep in terrible grief. For 7 days, according to the reckoning of the heavenly realm, they experience the agony of death and transmigration, a depth of suffering utterly unknown in the human state. So the gods then begin to display signs of mortality. Their flowers wilt, they begin to sweat, they begin to have body odors, they're left behind by their beautiful friends. They just say, oh, too bad, may you have a higher rebirth. And then they move away. And as such, left there lonely, these gods then suffer tremendously, knowing where they will be reborn. 23. The mighty luminaries of the sun and moon are tenants of vast parasols of light that overstretch the wings of Yugandhara mountains. But utter blindness waits for them in times to come, imprisoned in a state of deep obscurity. The gods of the sun and moon dwell in mansions of light that illuminate the 4 cosmic continents of the universe. Their palaces are shaped like parasols and are of such immensity as to block out the sky above the Yugandhara mountains, rising up to half the altitude of Mount Meru. Of course, here we're drawing on a cosmology for which we're not that familiar. But if you like, you can look in the volume 1 of the Encyclopedia of Knowledge, or what was published as Myriad Worlds. The first section there describes this classical model of the universe. And yet, at some future time, these divine beings will find themselves in the darkest of regions, in places of such impenetrable gloom that they will be unable to see even their hands in front of their faces. So, I'd like to stop here today. I've just been teaching for 6 hours, and so maybe stop slightly early. I'm happy to take questions, but I think since we're on to another realm, let's just stop at this place. I hope, again, like I'm always saying, please don't be traumatized by this. The point of this really is right now, we have every condition in our hands. And so we say the good news is that we can do something about this. This is just like when we are prepared for life, our parents would like us to know what are the conditions. They'd like to give us the best understanding, and we can understand how very often it happens that in life, persons simply because of bad choices end up suffering as a consequence. And likewise, the Buddha would also like us not to make bad choices in terms of how we handle ourselves. We presently have all the privilege. We've been taken to, a very good school, Buddha Dharma, in which there's a knowledge of how to handle our reality. And there's every possibility for us to free ourselves. So this is why we don't want to waste this opportunity. But we also are not going to sort of be blind about what are the consequences of the bad choices. And this is not just only about us and our intelligent choices, but it's also about understanding the plight and the situation of others. So this is where our heart goes out. We think of war zones, and we could say we're grateful that we're not there, but also we our thoughts go to those who are in the war zones and those who are in the places of conflict, hunger, and incredible, unspeakable hardship. So it's not as if we'd like to say, please turn off the TV. I don't want to know about what's going on. We actually leave the TV on so that we can see what is happening. And this drives our you could say, sympathy. And we understand how fortunate we are not to be there. And think, what can I do to help these people? All right. Oh. Thank you. Best wishes for this entire year. Now, concerning the hell realm, I often wonder what to do for beings caught in ephemeral realms, because in the old house where I live, there are 2 fireplaces, doors, of course, and I have a rope found in the mountain. And being conscious of that poor beings could be caught in these, what could I do to liberate them? Am I able to do it, or would it require the help of a lama? To liberate them would require the help of a lama. Actually, I remember in Chateau de Chaban, down in Dordogne, in the Côte d'Azur, there was a ghost living there. And actually, people like Matthew Ricard and others, they will testify that you could actually see footprints in the carpet sometimes. But also, yeah, the Benson family lived there. So are some of the Bensons. But anyway, eventually Dudjom Rinpoche was able to liberate this spirit. And it was a sad story about what had brought this spirit to that particular place. But it does require an extraordinary yogi who can do that. Unless we, and we shouldn't assume that every rope is inhabited or every door, but at the same time, that is why in Tibetan culture, you actually don't slam the doors, or in general, you sort of just tend it to your environment. So just treating these, you could say, the places where we live and understanding the potential of persons living in these spaces, that we then treat, you could say, our world with some gentleness. Yeah? It's inevitable. We're going to have to chop wood. We're going to have to burn wood. It's inevitable. But at least this is where we become conscious of the plight of sentient beings. I just remember something tangentially related. Isn't it the case that you cannot be, say, an eunuch? How do you pronounce that again? Eunuch? To take certain vows. Yeah, that's right. There is something about that, isn't there? I remember Rinpoche mentioning it in the passing in some teaching. That would make sense, because voluntarily renouncing something that isn't available anyway sounds inconsequential, even as far as the mind stream alone is concerned. Leaving the actual actions of speech and body aside. Okay, so it wouldn't be that impressive if you were, somebody who doesn't have libido, if you're an eunuch, and you then take a vow of celibacy. I guess that's the point. Yeah. What is the God mean? Are they person? Is it a human or an entity? Yeah, it's just another realm of samsara. We can be a human, we can be an animal, we can be a god. We're not talking gods in the sort of Abrahamic sense of a creator. We're just talking, another being, just like your neighbor. So God could be, could be Thor or Odin or Freya, or it could be, Mercury, or it could be Zeus, or, the inhabitants of Valhalla and the inhabitants of Mount Olympus. But they're beings, just like Indra and so on. These are all gods, just like you and me. They're sentient beings who have a sense of I. So it's a realm of samsara. Some teachings I've heard is that the 6 realms are not really out there per se, but just really a state of our own mind. So whatever is being described of the hell and God realm is really our own mind. So do these places really exist, like Japan exists? Well, that's the thing. So hell realm, yes, it's just in the mind. Just like New York City is in the mind, just like Japan is in the mind, just like whatever city you're in is in the mind. The room here I'm in, it's just a state of mind. But for me, it's very real. So the various realms, when we're in them, they're experienced as very real. So we understand that they are created by states of mind. This particular room that I'm experiencing right now, I perceive it the way I do due to the karmic imprints laid in my mind. They're due to the psychological conditions. They're created by the mind, but it appears very solid. Yeah, objects, they seem very solid to me. So if this hits me very hard, it might be a psychological experience, but for me, it feels very real. So how do we look at the floods that are happening in New South Wales? Some say floods or water disasters is caused by Nagas. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, but yes, but could be caused by Nagas. Maybe, yes. In Asia, there's a lot of awareness around the Nagas, and as such, we're always very careful around water bodies. We never pee next to lakes or pee in the water, or in general, just we treat the water bodies with a lot of sensitivity. We also treat the earth with a lot of sensitivity, also because the Nagas live under the earth. So there's a lot of that, and sometimes also illnesses is associated with having bothered the Nagas and so on. But unless you're very, clairvoyant, it's difficult to know what the causes and conditions are. Ironic that the year of the water tiger started with flooding. Yeah, somebody was just saying, somebody who living in Lismore wrote to me, it's like the water tiger just went on a rampage in this place. Yeah. All right, so we'll conclude at this point. So thank you. And again, I failed actually to start off. I was determined this lesson to not forget, beginning with a supplication to Jigme Lingpa, but we'll include it here in the dedication then. So, well, thank you for your thank yous. Okay. Let's see here. The source of love and compassion for all beings, who knows all that is knowable, emanation of Longchenpa, heir to a treasury of mind tamas, sky-like yogin of the vast expanse of luminosity. Jigme Lingpa, at your feet we pray. For all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with the 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we're born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the Holy Gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life. Thoroughly teaching the Holy Dharma in this world, may we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others, without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together. Okay. So please, once again, next episode, next installment of our study will be next Saturday. All right? I'll probably send out another mail to everyone here who's registered. And I hope we can do it with the same link. I'm not entirely sure. Otherwise, of course, I'll be sending a new link. But anyway, however it unfolds, next Saturday, 5:30. I hope to see you there. And next Sunday, also 5:30, the beginning of this new course, which is called Living is Dying. Okay. See you.